I tell you, the Church of Scientology is one of the most clever, toxic organizations probably that's ever existed.
Have you ever watched the Scientology Aftermath show by Leah Remini and Mike Render? You guys really should check it out. Our friend here, Ron Miscavige, the father of David Miscavige, who is the head of the board of Scientology. He's practically the Pope of the Scientology Church, which most people today that are seeing this stuff know, oh, this is a cult. I'm not buying into this BS. They're teaching all this crazy stuff and people are falling for it. Well, he escaped this cult, and he tells his story today. We poke deep into some hot topics. I hope you guys subscribe to the channel, like this video, join our Patreon to help us grow. It's down in the description. We are MythVision. Welcome to MythVision Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Lambert, and today we have a special guest. You guys do not want to miss this. Let's just put it this way. Can you imagine talking to, let's say, the Pope of the Catholic Church's father? And you're able to hear him talk about what it was like when he was part of the Catholic Church, and he knows the inside scoop on the Pope himself. Well, that is similar to what we're doing today. We have a guest, Ron Miscavige, the father of David Miscavige, who's one of the head leaders of the Church of Scientology. It separates families. You know, we're here to obviously expose cults for what they are and these high control cult type religions that really destroy lives. They might bring an added value initially, but that's all part and parcel in their way of getting control of your life and those around you. So with that being said, he is the author of a book called Ruthless, and I love the subtitle of the book, Scientology, My Son David Miscavige and Me. And I think every word there in that title carries extreme value. Scientology first, because when you hear his story in his book, got to get the book, guys. Get it in Audible, get it on all the platforms, but down in the description, you guys got to get the book, read the book, go to his website, check out his material, become a patron. You guys can do one-time donation to help him out in what he's doing. You want to see what's about to happen on the show. This is going to be wonderful. You talk about Scientology coming into your life. It fixed a lot of your anger issues, you with your ex-wife, all these things. And I just wanted to start out to say, these cults come in with problem-solving remedies, temporarily speaking, or maybe they help you see something about yourself. But then it's a downhill spiral for many people from there. And you've gone so far as to lose your family, Ron. And so with that being said, I'm sorry for your loss, but you're not a silent person, and your voice carries a lot of power. You've talked on Leah Remini's Aftermath show. You've discussed these things on large news platforms and a variety of different shows when it comes to talking about exposing the church. And I'm really glad and thankful that you're joining us today. And David Samuel is co-hosting with me today. David is the brains behind MythVision Podcast. So I really do appreciate you joining me, David. And this is obviously a wonderful interview that we're going to have. So thank you, guys.
And thanks, Ron, for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks, Ron. So do you want to start us off, David, with a question? Or, Ron, do you have something you'd like to say before we even begin?
Well, yeah, I will say one thing. I'm going to say a lot of things, but this is one thing. The person who just comes home from work, has a couple beers, watches TV, gets up in the morning, goes to work, you know, has a family, is not quite as prone to getting hooked as the person who thinks, is there more to life than I know about? That desire to find out about life, help yourself, and maybe help others is actually what sucks you in. And I can remember as a little kid, I'm talking about maybe 8 years old, in my house that I grew up in Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania, on the third floor of our house, we stored overcoats, winter clothes, and everything. And there was a bookshelf, and there was all kinds of books in there. And one book in there was The Prophet by Gibran. I mean, I'm 8 years old. I read this book. I don't know what the hell he was talking about. I knew this, though. I wanted to find out more about life.
Yeah.
And that's what got me started on this journey. Wanting to know more about life, wanting to figure out if I could help myself, my family, other people. And I knew one thing. I wouldn't do it by going on major news stations because I was on 2020 before my book came out. And by the way, I don't know if your audience knows this, but I'll tell it because it's worth telling. On May 26th, 2016, when my book came out, in nonfiction, it was #1. And for the month of June, it was #1 on the New York Times bestseller list.
Wow.
Now, that's, it's something. What the hell? I wanted to mention it. But prior to that, I was on a lot of the nightly news stations, and one of them was 2020. 2020 interviewed me in Philadelphia, because that's where the head of the program was, for over 6 hours, and then in Milwaukee for over 2 hours. So we're talking about 8 hours of interview. Maybe I was on the screen for 21 minutes, and they took sound bites and told a story they wanted to tell, which wasn't altogether unfair, but it said, Ron could be right, Ron could be wrong, the Church of Scientology could be right, they could be wrong. Completely lost the point that I went on the show for. And it was at that point that I decided I would have my own podcast, and I would invite people on, which, as you all know, it's therealronmiscavige.com. If you go to that, and when you click in, you'll see a guy sitting on a bench in front of a body of water, and up in the left-hand corner, it will say, "It must stop." That's my podcast. There you can watch the shows. I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, we'll make sure we'll put in the links to your website, to your YouTube channel, to all your books on Amazon, because Scientology have actually made a website for you, as in, like, they've created their own website, and it actually ranks above yours if you type in Ron Miscavige in Google. And
I know. It's a character assassination site. And the reason I'm telling you, to put in those things, that's the only way you're going to get to my station, because years ago, they bought over 500 variations of my name. So anything you would put in other than what I just told you is going to take you to their hate site. And if you look at that and believe it, I should have been shot many years ago. I'm no fucking good from the word go.
And
so
that's
I just go on.
And what they're doing to you, Ron, there is called fair game. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's similar to Jehovah's Witnesses have a similar teaching called theocratic warfare, right? So pretty much that means theocratic warfare. I mean, they don't take it to the lengths of Scientology, like do websites and stuff like that. I mean, that's just a whole nother level. But theocratic warfare basically means that you can lie to the authorities. If it's gonna if you're basically defending Jehovah, right? So, or Jehovah's organization, right? You're allowed to what's called theocratic warfare. So Scientology's got fair game, and they're using this fair game tactic against you with false websites about you, that type of stuff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, when the private investigators who were following me were caught, they were caught looking at a house across the street from mine to buy it, not to rent it. They're just going to buy it. Wow. And Nick Pye from the West Dallas Police was the one who arrested him. The reason he did, there was a lady who saw this guy looking in the windows of the house. She called the cops and said, "Hey, listen, there's a guy out here. He might be a drug dealer. I think you should investigate this." So Nick went there, and he confronted the guy. And by the way, Nick Pye, he's built like an NFL linebacker. I mean, if he come up and ask me a question, I'd say, "What do you want?" Immediately, So the guy's shooting off to him. He's giving him a bunch of shit. Finally, he says, Nick says, "You know what? You're arrested. You mind if I look in your car?" The guy said, "No." Nick went over to the car, and in that car, he found 5 license plates from different states, a stun gun, 5 handguns, 2 rifles, 1 with a silencer, and 2,000 rounds of ammunition. Now, why
would you need that?
Well,
Look, I get look, I'm a big Second Amendment guy, right? Like my father's he's a retired Green Beret in the Special Forces. And thank you for your service in the military too, Ron. I figured I'd tell you that as well. But I mean, I understand carrying a pistol, maybe even having a few weapons on you. But that's a lot of, he's not going looking hunting for deer. You know, this guy's,
no.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, he was taken to the Eastern Wisconsin Federal Court, and he was found, guilty, but the church sent a high-powered attorney up from Chicago, and he got him a 5-year suspension. So the guy was under probation for 5 years. But and by the way, this interview with these guys, Dwayne and Daniel Powell, that was his name, they're on my website. If somebody wants to go there and listen to the whole police interview, you can listen to it right on our website, where they admit that they were going to buy the house carte blanche, just like that. They were getting paid $10,000 a week.
I mean, are they hiring? Nice. I'm just kidding.
Listen.
Right? No, but they throw money big time. I have to ask, since you've been out this long, I mean, you are his father, but he has completely disowned you. He has had no communication or tried to make communication with you?
None whatever.
Wow.
And this is since 2000. You left in 2012, right, Ron?
Yeah, and that's the last time. Well, I spoke to him at the international base in Hemet, California, prior to leaving, but then we made our escape on March 26th, 2012. And I say escape. I'm not talking about we went to the gate and said, we'll see you guys later. If I would have done that, I'd probably still be there being interrogated for the rest of my life.
Ron, you're going to have to take us through this. You've told this story probably 1,000 times, and I understand, but we would really like to hear it afresh if possible. The best you can, give us what happened. You and your wife were both in the what is it called? The community?
Golden Era Productions. Golden Era Productions has about maybe 400 acres. I could be wrong on that, but it's divided by a highway that runs down the center. So there's the north side of the base, and there's the south side of the base. And there's a tunnel where on foot people can go across from the north side to the south side and vice versa. But as far as traffic is concerned, the main booth is where most of your traffic would go north and south. And then about 200-300 yards down the road, there is a gate, and there's a video camera on the gate, and you press the button, and the guard up at the main booth looks at you, and if you're allowed to go across, he'll press the button, and the gate will open. So I'm just setting up the scenario as to how this happened. Now, I saw this coming for years before we left, because it started getting more onerous and more, I don't know how to put it. I mean, you couldn't live as a free human being on that base. As an example, if you were going to send a letter to somebody, you'd have to let it open, and the security guards would read it. And if there's something in there you shouldn't have said, they'd send it back. You had to correct it. All of your mail was open before you got it. If you wanted to make a call, it had to go through a reception, and that reception would ask, what are you doing? Why are you calling? And then when you start speaking, she would listen in and write a report on what you talked about to that person and sent it to security. So there was a dossier being built up on everybody. Seeing this, I said to my wife, listen, Becky, this is going to get worse as we live here. She says, no, it's going to get better. She's the eternal optimist. I mean, she can see a light in the room where there isn't any. The pessimist goes in and blows the fucking light out. But anyway, I couldn't convince her. I said, listen, things are getting bad. You know that. If a boulder is running down the mountain, do you think somehow it's going to stop and roll up the mountain? Life doesn't work that way. If things are going bad and they continue in all those things that make it bad, it'll get worse. Well, anyway, the kicker was this. David gave me a Kindle for a Christmas present one year. You know what a Kindle is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is the old-fashioned one that you didn't press it wasn't touch sensitive. There was a little control knob on there, and if you pressed it to the left, it would go to the left. It'd go to the right. It would go up. It would go down. It was metallic, and it was mechanical. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So now I got this as a gift, and the security guards were pressing me to give it to them. And I says, what are you talking about? It's a gift from David. Are you nuts? What the hell am I going to give you this for? So they backed off. So now, one night I'm at home, and what David did is he put all the L. Ron Hubbard science fiction stories on there. And I ran across a word I didn't understand. And if you have a Kindle or if you ever used one, you can press it a certain way and it will look up that word selected in a dictionary, right? I saw a word that I didn't understand. I pressed the little metallic lever to the right. It didn't stop in the dictionary. I was on the internet with no filter. And that was it. So I started reading about various things they said about Scientology, about all of the abuses and everything. And one of the things I saw was this. There was a girl on the base called Annie Tidman. She was with L. Ron Hubbard when he died. She traveled around with him when he was traveling around in his trailer and was a real loyal Commodore's messenger. So now Annie is on the base and she contracts lung cancer. So they said, okay, we're going to send her to Los Angeles to get treatment, and we're going to send a minder with her. In other words, somebody to help her whatever she needs. I would ask the medical liaison officer, maybe once a week, how's Annie doing? Because Annie and I are good friends. And she'd say, oh, Ronnie, she's doing good. She's doing wonderful. On the internet, Annie Tidman died 6 months earlier. And the next day, unbelievably, 2 girls were standing outside the birthing where I lived, and they said, Ron, do you want to contribute something to Annie's birthday? We're going to send her a gift. And I thought to myself, they're either in on it or they're just part of the ploy, and they're being kept in the dark too.
Wow.
So I started looking at that, and when Becky came home, I started telling her these things. And I said, listen, we got to get out of here. She agreed. So we set up a plan, and the plan was this. My 75th birthday was coming up, and she called my daughters and told them to send me 75 gifts. I mean, it could be as much as a little flashlight or, a pen or something, but I got 75 gifts. It was a ton of stuff. The guards let it through because, it was from my children. Fine. So Becky came up with the idea, in order for us to save some of the things that we didn't want to throw out, we would give her mother that many gifts for as many years' birthday as she has. I'm married to a younger woman. My first wife and I got divorced before I went in the Sea Org. But so that's what we started doing. We started sending out all those things we wanted to keep, like a car detailing kit. There is as much chance of her using a car detailing kit as there would be for a dog, learning how to ride a 2-wheel bicycle. I mean, it's not real, but they let it go through. So we got rid of a lot of stuff. Now, this took about 6 months. And every Sunday morning, which we had what they called Clean Ship Project, which meant on Sunday morning between 9 o'clock and noon, you cleaned your berthing and you cleaned the building that you lived in. And that's what you did. But at 9 o'clock every Sunday morning, I would drive across from the southern part of the base to the north side to the music studio where I worked. Because in that music studio, there was a refrigerator where I kept Italian salami, I kept provolone cheese, Parmesan cheese, a lot of goodies. What I would do is come back through the main gate and give the guards some of this cheese or salami. So every time I went over, they knew they were getting a treat on the way back. In other words, I was feeding the watchdogs. So now
you were being smart. You were being smart.
Well, we had a plan. As a matter of fact, I still have the book that I wrote down the things we wanted to keep, the things that we're willing to waste. So now comes the day we're going to leave. I get up. I must have got up 7 in the morning. I went through the list, I don't know how many times, just over and over. Are you sure we're doing the right thing? So I took my Nextel phone and put it down on the nightstand. Took my pager, which was like a leash on me, put it down. We get out, get in the car. And by the way, the night before, I'm putting a mesh bag. You know what a mesh bag is. You can see through it. Full of shoes that I'm taking. And the security guard drives up on his motorcycle and looks at me doing this, but doesn't think anything. Who would think the father of the head of Church of Scientology was going to leave? So he accepted it as, it's fine, whatever. So the next morning we get up, get in the car, and I drive past the place where we eat, which is called Massacre Canyon Inn. That's short MCI. It's a place where all the crew would eat. It's like a big mess hall. All right. I see the chase car outside the mess hall. The chase car is a car that is used if somebody escapes. They go after you in the car and they seize you. And I knew that the guy driving it was inside having breakfast. So I knew I had a little leverage there. I go past that, go up to the gate, and believe me when I tell you, my heart was in my throat when I did this. I pressed the button, and without a word being said, the gate was being opened. I drove out of that gate, and I said to my wife, Becky, we're turning left. I turned the car left, put my foot to the floor on the gas pedal. I must have been hitting about 75 or 80 within a mile down to, there's 3 choices you have to make. If you turn right, you'd get on Route 10, which would take you to Los Angeles. If you went straight, you'd get on Route 60, which would take you to Los Angeles. If you turn left, you would go into the town of Hemet. And I had about a mile stretch where I turned left and went into Hemet. And as soon as I got to that first light, I turned right, and that was it. We were free. Wow. And I drove across the nation. I didn't let my wife drive. I don't know why I didn't let her drive, but well, no, I'll tell you why. I knew if they come after us, I would be willing to do any defensive moves. I knew I could get away, and I don't know if she'd be as aggressive as I am. Yeah. So we drove across for about 2.5 days. I did not use a credit card. I paid cash for the food, for the lodging, for the gas and everything. And then we stopped at a Walmart and bought a flip-top telephone. And I got enough in there, I guess it's so many minutes of airtime you have on that. We got to the point where we were within about an hour and a half of Whitewater, and I couldn't go any further. I was dead beat. So we stopped the car. I found a place where we could stay overnight, but Becky called her brother and said, Donnie, I'm coming home. And he yelled out, somebody get me a drink. Becky's coming home.
That's so awesome. David.
That was wow. That is just unbelievable. That is just crazy. Like, wow. I mean, Ron, you were in this organization for 41 years.
Yeah, I was in for 42 years, but I was on staff for 26 and a half years.
Wow. So to escape, that's like an escape from just Alcatraz. Like that is just a.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it is. It is like an escape from Alcatraz.
Yeah.
And there was a great movie on it called Escape from Alcatraz with Clint Eastwood. I don't know if you saw that. And then they made a later movie.
I've seen it. Yeah.
David, did you have a question you were going to ask?
I mean, that's wow. I mean, you're the first Scientologist ex-Scientologist, sorry, Ron, that we've had on the channel, and I couldn't think of a more fitting guest to kick off, which we hope to have future ex-Scientologists on. Yes. But I mean, that's a fascinating story.
Well, Well, let me follow up with something, okay? Because this is worth hearing.
Sure. Sure.
I mentioned earlier on that the person least likely to do this would be a person who had no interest in finding out more about life. That's it. You put out your feelers, you're going to get hooked. Now, I'll tell you why. When you first come in, there are courses that you do, and one of them is the communication course. And what it does, it lays out the exact anatomy of what takes place in a proper communication. And you learn this, and you learn the preciseness of using that in your job, in dealing with people. And I'm going to tell you something. There are a lot of people, as a matter of fact, most people who are watching this, who are former Scientologists, will agree that that course was the one thing that they thought was really worthwhile doing. Because you go out and you demonstrate your expertise in handling communication, and you're doing better. You're handling people better. You're handling your life better. So now you gain confidence with that. And then there's other things you do. There's beginning what's called auditing, which is another word for counseling. And what it is, it's a way for you to sit down with another person who's not going to evaluate for what you're saying or tell you what to think, but is basically a listener who will acknowledge what you're saying. And just in this very basic type of counseling or auditing, you feel better. You feel quite relieved, as a matter of fact, because you can talk about certain things maybe you never told anybody, and you could tell them this person, you get an acknowledgement, and you think, shit, this works, you know. So now there's two certainties you have. Somewhere along the line, you're going to be introduced to some fact or some principle, and you might say, man, I don't know if I agree with that, but everything so far has been good. I'll accept it. It's at that point you're hooked. Now you are doing this because in Scientology, as a public Scientologist, you're supposed to study 2.5 hours a day, 5 days a week. And what you are doing is you are sitting down and actually altering your mind with those things that you're reading about. You're brainwashing yourself.
And this is L. Ron Hubbard material, pretty much, mainly.
Oh, it's not mainly. It's all L. Ron Hubbard. And I'll tell you this, the lectures, man, I'm going to tell you something. This guy, you hear him talking, you think, this guy's great. You must be telling the truth. And nothing could be further from the truth. He wasn't telling the truth. But it's so clever, the way it works. And you yourself are building your own prison that you're going to live in. You
don't even realize it, though. You're like a soldier just digging the trench, not realizing you're digging your own hole to get yourself stuck in, and you're happy singing a song while you're doing it. I think what they're doing is they're using practical wisdom, obvious practical things that work in real life, and they're combining it with a little bit of BS. And the BS combined with the stuff that is practical wisdom that actually works, you know, like you reap what you sow. Well, I mean, if I go and I harvest food, or if I go work my ass off, I'm going to get a paycheck. Well, that's common sense. Or talking to another human being about secret things that you're now having a disclosure saying, we can't talk about this to anyone else. This is between you and me. There is a therapeutic aspect of this. That's why the Catholic Church and other religions have had confession for thousands of years. They've had ways, and it's a common practical thing everyone does. Scientology grabs those things, uses them, and then combines them with BS, you know, to get you hooked. So, David, I know I'm cutting you off from a question, though. You know me, man.
No, well, actually, Ron's kind of steering into, I just want to kind of like start to just steer the conversation a little bit into, just to give our viewers a little bit of an overview of some Scientology teachings, because I'm sure our viewers are going to be fascinated to hear about thetans and Xenu, which you don't learn straight away. So, Ron, if you could just give us, like, I know we're kind of limited with time, but just some of the teachings or doctrines or that Scientology has, and they don't reveal it to you straight away. You kind of got to cough up the dough a little bit to learn to learn more truth. You don't get
hold it. Not a little bit, a lot. A lot of dough.
Is this going to cost us like $1 million or?
Okay. Let me put it this way. When I first got in Scientology, you could do what was called the bridge. It's called the bridge to total freedom. You could do that from the bottom to the top in the early 70s for about $5,000.
About in the 70s?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was visiting with friends in California, and I saw an old magazine that was from then, and they had prices in there. It was very affordable. In other words, the average person could do it without going bankrupt or putting a second mortgage on his house. Well, maybe he would take a loan on his house, but you could do it. But you never gained the things that were promised. And this is where the entire structure falls into a dung heap on the side of the road. And that is this. You are promised that you have these supernatural powers to be able to leave your body as a spiritual being and go to another country and read a newspaper over there. And that, in my 42 years, I never met one person who ever achieved that. Never, not one.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I know, but you're buying into it, and it was your hope. Yeah.
But the thing is this, guys, people who do that level pretend they have this.
Oh.
They pretend that they have this. I'll give you an example. I was in a building one time with another guy who achieved OT8, which is the top of the bridge. And we come up to this door, and the door was locked. There's another guy with us who said, "Hey, why don't you open the door? You're OT8, you can do that." And he says, "No, I will never do it. I did it one time and a person got sick. I will never do it again." Which was bullshit. He couldn't do it. But he made up a good story. It sounded, oh, well, he doesn't want to make somebody sick. These are the things that happen. Now, the story about Xenu is that the galactic warlord, who was the head, well, this happened on 26 nearby stars where there was a confederation, okay, a galactic confederation, and Xenu was the head of it. And the problem on these planets was overpopulation. In order to solve that problem, he captured the spiritual beings on those planets, put them in dry ice, and flew them to planet Earth on spaceships similar to DC-10 airplanes. Now, the average population was 150 billion. You have 26 nearby planets. I think there were 76 stars, something like that. How many people do you want to take down to solve the overpopulation? At least half the population, 75 billion, times all that. When I read the material, I thought, logistically, this is impossible.
I have to ask you about reading that material. Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to comment as we go. This is very important. This material that you're reading, I was told, as someone who's never been a Scientologist, never been into this stuff, you can't just read this. You can't just access this material. When did you get your hands on this material? How much did it cost you to be able to know this material? You see what I mean?
Oh, in those days, it was very affordable. I even forget how much I paid, but it was within thousands of dollars. These days, in order to get to that level, it would probably cost you maybe $150,000. I don't know. Just a lot of money. But now, knowing this, I'm sitting in a chair and you're going to audit yourself. And I thought, man, I tell you, I don't know if this is going to work. Well, I started the auditing session and I did the first process and I found relief in a certain area that I had wanted to get relief from. That sold me. Now, that could be as simple as maybe talking to somebody about something that you hadn't told anybody, and they gave you a good acknowledgement. You thought, God damn, I feel better. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
But when you're at that point, you're so far in, and you've done this self-indoctrination with the study you've done, you have a platen of things that are you have to believe in order to be a Scientologist. One of the most fruitful things that ever happened to me is a friend of mine, Fernando Gamboa. He was in the Sea organization when I was in, and him and his wife left far before me. And I was talking to him on a phone. This is years ago now, when I first got out. And he said, Ronnie, let's face it, we were conned. I hung up from him. I walked into my middle hallway here in back of me, and there's a full-length mirror on the wall. And I looked at myself in the mirror, and I said, you were conned. And at that point, I started peeling the skin off the onion.
Wow.
I started saying, now, wait a minute. They said this. Is that true? Wait, that's bullshit. Toss it away. Toss that away. Toss it away. And that's how I got rid of it. And I thank this friend of mine, because he helped me tremendously with that one statement, you were conned. But now, if you think, yeah, I was conned, but the reason I did it was no, you haven't hit the actual phenomena of accepting the fact that you got fucked over and you didn't know you were getting fucked over and you made a mistake. If you say, well, the reason I did it was such and such, and you start justifying it, you've done nothing. You see what I'm saying? It has to be a full admission that you were wrong. Hang on.
David Miscavige calling. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm doing an interview, Becky. I'll talk to you in a bit. Bye-bye.
Derek,
I'm just teasing.
Okay, wait till I turn it off. Normally, my wife knew I was going to do this, but I got such a wonderful... I got a great wife. I got to tell you something. That's
awesome. Saving
grace in my life. The cold weather isn't. Boy, I'll tell you. When it's 8 degrees below zero at night, ain't comfortable.
It's super hot here in Australia. It's about 100 degrees Fahrenheit today. Derek, I just wanted to, because I'm going to ask Ron a question in a sec. Do you remember our good friend Cliff Fifth?
Yes.
Cliff Henderson. In his film clip, he signs a lifetime contract, but it's not really you don't actually sign a contract like when you get baptized as a Jehovah's Witness, right? You don't, but you are, like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And explains it in the interview, which if you haven't checked out, by the way, go check it out. Just search for Fifth or Cliff Henderson on this channel. Ron, when did you sign? Because in Scientology, you actually sign a 10-year contract. When did you sign this contract with this organization? You signed a $1 billion contract?
Right. I signed it in the 70s, but I never actually activated it because I had a family to raise, and I just couldn't leave them on their own. Although many people have done that. They sign a Sea Org contract, go into Sea Org, and let their families fend for themselves. I'll tell you, man, these sons of bitches are toxic. It's not minor. But I'll tell you, then I really signed one in Los Angeles, and that one I activated, and I actually entered the Sea Org. I entered on June 30th, 1985. And in January of the following year, L. Ron Hubbard, they said, dropped his body. The fact is he died. He didn't do it on a causative basis, but a whole story was made up. There was an event at the Palladium in Los Angeles, and a piece of music was written for it, and everybody cheered and everything. And
what do you think happened to him, honestly? Do you think from what I understood, I was listening to some critical people on him, and that he, like many other phenomenal, big-minded, big people, like everyone from Hitler to Joseph Smith to you name it, these cult leaders, they always have a pharmacist of some sort nearby that kind of chemically gave them. Did anything to do with drugs or anything come up? Or
that was a story I heard. That was a story I heard from several people, that he was injected in his butt with the psychotropic drug, and then he died some hours later from that.
Wow.
And the thing he was against was psychiatry and, the American Medical Association, because they said your theory is just bunk. They wouldn't accept it. So, and he never forgave them for that.
Mm-hmm.
But ironically, that's how he died, from the data that I have from people who observed this. And as a matter of fact, I'll tell you, one of the guys came to me after this and he said, yeah, Ron, I was there. And then L. Ron Hubbard said, do you think they'll miss me when I go? And this guy's telling me this because he knows that I would talk to a lot of people. And I thought, you know what, Ray, you're giving me a bunch of horseshit. I didn't say that to him, but you could just smell it a mile away. He's trying to give this to me that I'd go around and saying, oh yeah, this was happening. This is what happened to L. Ron Hubbard. I never did it. And I suspected it wasn't true even at the Palladium when I went to that event.
Wow. You were in, so you bought the whole package. David, let me ask one question here and then I'll pass it to you because this is important. You know, we watch Leah Remini and Mike Render, of course, as well, and what they've done. And of course, your son is still in this and he hasn't spoken to you. So I guess the best thing I could do is, since your book is called Ruthless, and he obviously is a ruthless gentleman, if you will, and that's a kind word to use, actually, for the way David has been treating people, from what I understand. He's just kind of a tyrant at the top there. The power's gotten to his mind. And my question, and this is more of a personal question, do you think underneath that, there's that young boy that you talk about in the book that still knows good from bad, that still loves you, that still wishes he wasn't caught up in this deep down? If the power was stripped away tomorrow, say a raid happened and everything he stood for just stripped away in terms of all the luxury he lives and all the attention he gets from those who are Scientologists, do you think there'd be a chance he'd turn back and say, Dad, I was wrong and I love you?
I don't know if he would ever say I was wrong and I love you, but I can tell you, and by the way, you said what I think happened to him, and that was the power. Mm-hmm. There was an English statesman named Lord Acton. He's the one who said, and he lived in the late 1850s up until early 19-something. He's the one that said, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. He also said, and you never hear this, great men are almost always bad men. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this. David was really one of the reasons I got my family in Scientology, because he was born with terrible asthmatic condition. And I would be the one who would try everything in my power to help him with it. But there's nothing as sorrowful as seeing a little kid who can't breathe out. They can breathe in, but they can't blow their air out. Mm. And turning blue, and you don't know, what the hell am I going to do, you know? Yeah. I mean, I tried a lot of different things that I thought might work. One of them, I'll tell you something that happened to me. It's kind of related, but let me diverse for a second, okay? I'll get back to this. When I was in the Marine Corps, this is back in between 53 and 56, I ended up in Quantico, Virginia. And I had some dental work done. And the day after I had the dental work done, my entire face went into extreme pain. So the following day, I went down to see the dentist, and I said, listen, at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, my face goes into incredible pain. What do we do? He said, oh, that's facial neuralgia. I said, well, how do you handle it? He goes, well, here's some aspirins. I thought, you named it, and now it's handled? What is this? But that's how I felt. Give it a name. So I went back to the barracks, and it came on again. I went to the PX, I bought a bottle of bourbon. And every day, just before it came on, I'd pour myself a glass, whip it down. And after about 3 or 4 days, I thought, Jesus Christ, I'm going to become an alcoholic. So I took the remainder, I poured it down the toilet, threw the bottle out, and now my face is in such bad pain that I'm slobbering. And there's an air station there. And in the air station building where they store the planes and everything, there was a gym. So I walked up there, about a mile away, walked in, saw a guy standing there. I said, hey, you want to lift weights and spot me? He said, yeah, let's work out. I'm in pain. So I lay down on a bench. I do a set of bench presses. He spots me. I do the second set of bench presses. I said, take the bar. The pain was gone. So I said, I sat on the edge of the bench and I theorized, if you could divert your attention to something other than the pain will go away because it needs attention on it to exist. And that was a theory that I applied many different times in my life, and it worked every time. So now, with David, I used to take him in the garage when he was about ready to have an asthmatic attack. In our house, it was cold as a bitch in the wintertime, and make him lift weights. And sometimes I'd cut it off at the pass. But the most amazing thing that ever happened was one time, and this is in a dead winter in South Jersey, which is really cold. He's going into an attack, and I could see it's going to be bad. So I take him upstairs to the bathroom, took off all of his clothes, took off all of my clothes, and we had a stand-up shower in there, a big one. So I turned the warm water on both of us, and I'm holding him in my arms. And I said, David, I'm with you, kid. I turned that hot water off, and that fucking water come out maybe 1 degree above freezing. And immediately he started breathing in and out, breathing in and out. I thought, I took him out of the shower, wiped him down with the Turkish towel. As a moment, I gave him a kiss, and he was okay. So that proved it out. Now, I got to tell you, it was a moment for me, and we enjoyed a very good friendship when he was a little kid. I got to tell you, it was this bright little kid, tough. He played Little League football. I used to have to put a 2.5-pound plate in each of his shorts to make the minimum weight on the football team. And he played safety, and nobody ever ran for a touchdown when he played. He broke his leg one time, and that was it. And he just, I sat up with him the whole night because I thought he was going to die that night between the broken leg and he has asthma. But that theory about diverting it, that's one thing. The other thing is what Lord Acton said about power. Now, David goes in the Sea Organization when he's 16 years old.
Yeah.
The way it happened is I came home from work one night. He's 15. And I said, what's up, Dave? He was laying in bed. He said, I don't want to go to school anymore. I said, why? He says, the kids don't want to learn. They mouth off to the teacher. Everybody smokes drugs. I want to go and help L. Ron Hubbard. Well, I thought to myself, when I was 17 years old, I had my dad sign for me so I could go in the Marine Corps. I went in, and the first night was a living nightmare. It was like, did you ever see Full Metal Jacket?
Oh, yeah.
That is how first night in boot camp is. And it is a nightmare. And I said, this is the worst mistake I've ever made in my life. A couple months later, we're done with boot camp. And I thought to myself, they turned me from an undisciplined civilian into a disciplined Marine. That has helped me my whole life. Back to David. And I thought, you know what? Maybe he should do this. Mm-hmm. He wants to do it. So I said, okay, Dave, I'll help you. So I helped him. I bought him clothes and everything, and I bought an airline's ticket to Florida. He goes down, and within 7 months, he's working with L. Ron Hubbard. And he worked himself up through the years to a position of power where he was the person, whatever L. Ron Hubbard said to the world of Scientology came through him, and whatever anybody said to go to L. Ron Hubbard came through David. That's a position of power when you control the communication lines. But along the way, he did get a severe asthmatic attack so bad that he had to go to the hospital. And when he was in the hospital, he had this realization. And when he come out, he told us, to the guy who took him, he said, listen, I had a major realization, and that is this. Power is not granted, it is assumed. And by assuming that power, he got people out of the way who would protest against him, put people in their place who would back him up, and ended up being the leader of the Church of Scientology. And that's how he did it. That's the story in a nutshell, guys. Right there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. David, do you have a comment or question? And then I'd love to follow through with some stuff.
Scientology's been known over the years to attract a lot of Hollywood celebrities, right? We know, obviously, Tom Cruise, John Travolta, many others. Did you meet some of these guys? Like, have you met Tom Cruise and John Travolta and Nicole Kidman?
Absolutely, I met all of them. I met all of them. But it isn't that Scientology attracts them. Scientology goes after them, and they do everything in their power. No, and the reason is this: you hear John Travolta is a Scientologist. He is what's called an opinion leader. People will say, I want to be like him. Oh, he does Scientology? I want to try it out.
Right.
Same thing with Tom Cruise. Same thing with Kirstie Alley or Ann Archer or any of these. All right. And that has limited value these days because the toothpaste is out of the tube. You're not going to get it back in.
Yeah.
I mean, there's too much bad shit that has been exposed. So that has a limited amount of coin value. But I will tell you this. They're not subjected to almost... They can do anything they want to do and get away with it. They're like the baby that's born with a silver spoon in their mouth,
Yeah, they get treated that way to keep them. That's a great point. Let me ask you this, because in light of what you just said, David, these celebrities, we have wonderful people like Leah Remini and even Mike Rinder, though he's not a celebrity, he is now. His position and where he was in the church. Did you catch any shit from him when you left? Because you left before he did, if I'm not mistaken.
No, and I'll tell you, I know Mike Rinder since he was 15 years old from St. Hill in England. His family used to come over, and I brought my family over. And we used to sit outside of a certain part of the organization. And there was a log. It was split in half. We'd sit on this log. And Mike was 15 years old. And then he ended up going in the Sea organization. No, I never caught any shit from him. And Leah Remini, I know since the day she got the job with King of Queens. I just happened to be at what's called Celebrity Center. And this young girl came out and said, I got the part. And I said, what do you mean? And she told me this, and I gave her a big hug. We became very good friends. I speak to her quite a bit. And both of them are wonderful people.
I know.
And they're just the best, What am I going to say?
Well, Mike Rinder's actually from my home city. He was born in Adelaide in South Australia.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So fascinating that he made it from Adelaide, which is a pretty small city in Australia, all the way over to to be in such a high position in Scientology in the US.
Well, I'll tell you, if you knew, well, I guess I might as well confess to you, David. In my kitchen, I have Marmite. I don't have Vegemite.
I have no clue what that is.
Okay, I'll tell you, it's a yeast. It's made from yeast, and it's like a paste. And it's very salty, and it definitely is an acquired taste. You toast bread. It's very high in B vitamins. Put butter on it and put some of the Marmite or Vegemite. But it's very hard to get Vegemite in the States, so I get Marmite. And people say, oh, you're a goddamn traitor, But anyway.
I'll send you some wrong.
Well, if you would, I'd appreciate it.
I'll send you some big tubs.
Let me ask you this, Ron. I asked a pretty emotional question prior about your son, and if you thought, do you think he still loves you? Okay, that's a tough question for you to answer on his behalf in light of where he's at. He may have lost his way so much so he doesn't know how to get back. But you mention in your book and on shows that when these private investigators were following you, there was a certain time where you had to bend over to grab something, and they assumed you were having a heart attack, that you were dying. And they reported this. You found out from the cops showing up to your house saying, are you okay? First of all, not are you okay? You're alive. First of all, like, what are you doing alive? You're supposed to be dead. And they informed you that a lawyer contacted, or somehow there was a lawyer they're slick. They got a lot of money. They know how to connect person to person to person to person to finally get it to you to find out what's going on. Do you think when he said, don't worry about it, let him die, that was kind of your way of saying my son's done? he's done with me. And
well, let's put it this way. I couldn't do that to him.
right.
I couldn't. As a matter of fact, I tell you, if I saw a cat who was in trouble, I'd pick up the cat and I'd try to comfort it or something.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a shock to me. I got to tell you that, because I thought my cell phone was going to fall out of my. I had a T-shirt, a pocket T-shirt on, and my cell phone was up in my left-hand pocket. And I bent over. I grabbed my left chest with my right hand, and that's when the PIs thought I was having a heart attack, and they called in and said, "Look, it looks like the target." They used to refer to me as the target, is having a heart attack. And within minutes, David got on the phone. He identified himself as David, and he said, "Listen, if it's his time to die, let him die. Don't do anything. Don't intervene."
Okay, I have to ask you, Ron. I'm sorry, I got to cut you off because I got to pressure you on this, and this is so important because what you're saying is obviously a serious thing. How do you know that he said that? You know what I mean?
Derek.
Huh?
How do I know he said it?
How do you know that he said, "Don't intervene, don't worry, let him die"? Like, how do you know that? Did those private investigators come out with that and say, "Look, this is what he said"? Or
okay, if you go on to my website, and again, it's therealronmiscavige.com, the interview with those private investigators, the full interview with the father and with the son, is on that site. You can listen to Nick Pye, and I forget the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms guy interview, and the son tells exactly that's what happened. And he didn't see his father before he was taken in for the interview, and the father in the prior interview told him privately that's what David said. So unbeknownst to each other that they were going to say that, both of them said this, but you can hear it on tape where the son is saying that that's what he said.
Thank you. I'm sorry I interrupted. I know that people will be naysayers, and and I know the church has probably downplayed this whole thing against you to make you seem like, no, we never wanted you. We were never cool with you dying or anything like that. In fact, do they try to act like they didn't have these guys as investigators? Or are they playing that off as well? I mean, how far do they take this? Do they admit they had private investigators watching you and following you? I mean,
well, they never said one way or the other, but I mean, who the hell is going to give you $10,000 a week? You know, some homeless guy living under a overpass? It's got to be somebody who has hot and run. You know, they open up a spigot, out comes the money, because they have what is called whales. You know what a whale is? They refer to that person in Las Vegas as a high roller. Yeah. He'll come in, they comp him his room, everything. When he goes down at the gambling tables, he just blows hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah. They have whales that contribute millions of dollars to Scientology. These people are completely brainwashed into thinking Scientology is going to improve conditions on this planet for every man, woman, and child. And nothing could be further from the truth.
Separate families. You're a perfect example of that, David. I'm taking this dang thing by the horns. Sorry.
Go on.
Scientology is actually quite a small religion. I know they like to play up the numbers. They don't publish their numbers, do they? Like, as in, they don't.
Oh, absolutely not. But the latest I heard from people who would know, who were on these particular, they call lines. In the 90s, they were at their height. They estimate around 90,000 people in Scientology throughout the world. That's through Europe, Russia, the Scandinavian countries.
That's very small, and about 55,000 in America alone. That's pretty small.
Well, now it's estimated that there's about 20,000 worldwide in Scientology. So it has shrunk like.
And that's the real numbers, not what they're hyping up in the church.
Right.
Interesting.
Well, I say real, but it's from people who would know, who were on those lines, who would know how many people go to an event and things like that, and how many people they send stuff out to who accept it. There's people on dissemination lines who have figures. These people have left, and that's who's saying it.
Wow. I got to ask you a question. They buy a lot of property, and these properties are empty. Leah Remini and Mike Rinder are showing, like, and tons of people have been saying, like, they're buying all this empty property and gaining land and property value and stuff and all this money. But what are they doing? What's the point? Do you know?
Well, here's the point, and I'll tell you, it's a good question. If you're a church, you just can't keep on accumulating money and putting it into the bank someplace. You have to show that you're doing things that would benefit the parishioners. So what they do is they buy a building and they put in what's called the Division 6, which tells you all, there's videos in there, tells you all about Scientology. Just architecturally beautiful, unbelievable. And that's supposed to be their contribution to their public to avail themselves of this brand new building, but it's full of air, not people. And when I was in Philadelphia getting interviewed for 2020, prior to my book coming out, prior to 2016, we went past the Philadelphia org. There was one guy sitting at reception, and it was an empty room. And the big building they got, which was 11 stories tall, was boarded up, and there was graffiti all over it. It just, it's done with smoke and mirrors, guys. But that's their way of saying we're doing something for our parishioners. That's why they do it. Okay,
so let me ask you this: you left the cult. You left. You escaped. You literally escaped. And when you left, and I suspect it took some time before you mustered up the courage to speak out against it, for fear of them coming after you. How long after you escaped did you muster up that courage to say, you know what? This is happening in my friends right now are in there, and they're still stuck in it. They can't even see it. You probably had enough time to wake up. We call that waking up. The XJWs call it waking up. The Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff, that when they start seeing the truth about the truth, and the truth about the truth is ugly. How long did it take you before you said, that's it, I'm doing it?
Well, a couple of years, because I'll tell you, I wanted to be anonymous. I just wanted to get on with my life. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I knew if I went online, that would be the end of my anonymity. I knew that. But once I started examining all the things that happened to me, I felt a sense of duty. I thought, I got to do this. And I can tell you something, guys. If you're going to do something like I'm doing, here's the attitude you got to take. It's basically keep your eye on the purpose of why you're doing it. And don't be distracted what the potential backflash or bad things would be. Basically, what I'm saying is, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. If you can't do this, then don't do what I'm doing. If you're always going to be worried about what they say and what's going to come back at you, and that's going to occupy your mind, you're not going to do what I'm doing. And I'm bulletproof. And I'll tell you why. Do you know why? I don't give a fuck what they say about me.
I feel you.
Say what they want. I don't care. Say anything. Tell anybody anything. I'm coming after you. And I'm going to expose you. And that's the reason I interview other people who have been abused. And that's the reason I give what I call story time, where people can improve their life. And that's the attitude you got to take. You can't be thinking, oh boy, what if I say this? What are they going to do? Come on. Grow up, man. This is the real world we're living in. And the real world, evil is possible. And if you don't do anything about it, you're never going to quite feel as good as you could if you do something about it. And you can do something, whether it's the smallest thing there is. At least you're doing something.
David.
Actually, I know we're kind of sharing the same notes. That was the exact same question that I was going to ask, so that's cool, man. Look, I know we're going to wrap it up And I just want to bring. I know we've got a lot of Australian viewers that watch MythVision. A couple of things. Firstly, there was a book released called Tom Cruise, an unauthorized biography, detailing Tom Cruise's activities within Scientology because of threats. I mean, legal threats by the Church of Scientology. The biggest bookshops here in Australia, Angus and Robertson, Dimox, actually had to withdraw, had to take off the shelf that book because of threats from Scientology. That's how these guys are very legal kind of an organisation that threatens legal action at the drop of a hat. Without a doubt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And just some context for Australian viewers, there's not many Scientologists in Australia. In 2016, there was a census, and we only have 1,684 Scientologists in Australia. And just wrapping up, this I found really fascinating, that one of our senators in Parliament House in Canberra, in the Commonwealth Parliament, his name is Nick Xenophon, and he's quite an outspoken Minister of Parliament, MP. And in 2009, he said something incredible in Parliament. Under parliamentary privilege in the Senate, Nick Xenophon declared that the Church of Scientology is a criminal organisation. He said that on November 18, 2009. That is just, I mean, we have a lot of freedoms of religion in Australia. You can just claim to be a religion, just get tax exempt status straight away. But for him to come out and say that, wow, I only found that out last night. That is just incredible. I mean, to call them a criminal organisation in Parliament, wow, that's insane.
Well, if you look at their acts, that's what you would consider them. I have a friend who said this one time. They are a cult a cult disguised as a religion operating as a business. And it is a toxic business. There's no two ways about it. Mm. I hope did you get your story, you guys? Did you feel that 100%. I answered all your questions?
Yeah, no, you really did a fantastic job. And I of course, we would love to have you come back again and definitely do more talks.
But I have to end this off with something I want to do. Yes. Tell me if you can hear the horn. I got to warm up a bit. So
go ahead.
Can you hear the horn?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the song. Right. You got to warm up your lips in order to play.
Right.
That's all, folks. Do you know where that's from?
Yes.
I'm gonna send you 6 jars of Vegemite, brother. I'm gonna send you 6 jars, man.
The old Bugs Bunnies.
I know, Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies.
Yes.
There you go, guys.
I love that. Thank you so much, Ron Miscavige, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you guys check that out in the description. Get to his website. I got to hear that interview directly from the horse's mouth of these investigators. I know you guys are interested about that for sure.
Absolutely watch that because it's well worth watching. Okay.
Links
100%. Get the book on Audible. The guy reading it. If you're like me and you don't have time to read a physical book sometimes, the guy reading it does a fantastic job, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you guys get the book. I really ask you guys to do that. He's got a one-time donation or Patreon you can support him on. And David Samuel, guys, applauds to him for helping out MythVision, getting the website going. Dude, he's been all over it. I can't tell you how much I rely on him and depend on him to make this thing happen. Join our Patreon. You can do that as well. Like this video, share this out there. Leah Remini, Mike Render, we're coming for you. So please, I hope you check it out, and we'd love to interview you as well. Any other ex-Scientologists who have a voice, let us know. We want to hear it for sure. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining me.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, David.
Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Bye-bye now.
Are MythVision.